Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Fluent Moments, the show where we laugh, learn, and survive the beautiful chaos of learning English in real life. I'm your host, Jake, a guy who once tried to order a sandwich and ended up proposing marriage by mistake. Today, I'm going to tell you the funny, honest, and sometimes embarrassing story of how I became fluent in English while living in America. So grab your coffee, relax, and let's begin this crazy journey together. When I first came to America, I thought my English was good enough. I really did. I had studied grammar, vocabulary, and pronunciation for years. I could say, "Hello, how are you?" with the confidence of a movie actor. But the first time someone spoke to me at full speed, I froze. I had no idea what they had just said. I smiled, nodded, and said, "Yes," even though I had no clue what I was agreeing to. That was the beginning of my English adventure. At first, everything felt like a test. Going to the store, ordering food, talking to a coworker, even answering the phone. I was terrified of speaking because I was afraid of making mistakes. I remember one time at work, a lady asked me, "Can you grab the mop?" And I thought she said, "Can you grab my cup?" So I went to her desk and almost took her coffee. She looked at me like I was crazy. I smiled and said, "Oh, sorry, I thought you said cup." That day I realized pronunciation was my worst enemy. The funniest thing happened a few weeks later. I was at a small party, trying to make new friends. There was this girl, really nice, with a big smile. I wanted to talk to her, so I practiced in my head for about 10 minutes what I was going to say. I took a deep breath, walked up to her, and said, "Hi, you look very table." She blinked and I realized I had confused beautiful with table because I had just learned that word in my English class. Everyone started laughing, and I wanted the floor to open up and swallow me. But she laughed too and said, "Well, that's a new compliment." We ended up talking for a while, and she said my accent was cute. That was the moment I understood that mistakes are not the end of the world. The truth is, when you're learning a language, you have to accept that you're going to sound funny sometimes. People will laugh, you'll get confused, and that's okay. I used to get home after work and practice in front of the mirror. I would repeat words like through, though, and thought until my tongue got tired. My roommate used to laugh and say, "Man, are you casting a spell or learning English?" Little by little, I started to notice progress. I began to understand jokes, movies, and even sarcasm. I remember the first time someone said, "break a leg," and I actually looked down at my leg confused. But after a few months, I started using those expressions myself. One day, a coworker was nervous before a presentation, and I said, "Break a leg, man." He looked at me and smiled. That felt like a victory. There were days when I felt stuck, like my brain refused to improve. I'd listen to people speak, and I could understand maybe 60%. That's when I realized that fluency isn't something that just happens. It's something you build day by day. I started thinking in English every morning. When I woke up, I'd tell myself, "Good morning," instead of "Buenos dias." I changed the language on my phone to English. I watched YouTube videos without subtitles. And I even talked to myself when nobody was around. One time I was walking down the street repeating English phrases out loud, and a lady thought I was talking to her. She smiled and said, "Excuse me." And I panicked. I said, "Oh, no, I'm just talking to me." She laughed and said, "Well, keep practicing." And I thought, yeah, she's right. The more I practiced, the more confident I became. My accent didn't disappear, and honestly, I don't want it to. It's part of who I am. It tells my story. It reminds me where I came from and how far I've come. I think one of the hardest parts of learning English was overcoming fear. Fear of sounding wrong, fear of people laughing, fear of not being understood. But every time I made a mistake, I learned something new. Like the time I went to order food and said, "Can I have a chicken without the leg, please?" The lady looked at me and said, "You mean chicken breast?" I said, yes, the chicken without the leg." We both laughed, and I never forgot that word again. If you're listening to this and you're trying to be fluent in English, let me tell you something. Fluency doesn't mean perfection. It means being able to express yourself, to connect with people, to make them laugh, to share your thoughts even if your grammar isn't perfect. When you stop trying to sound perfect and start trying to communicate, that's when the magic happens. I remember a time when I couldn't even order a coffee without feeling nervous. My hands would shake, my voice would crack, and my mind would go blank. Now I walk into a cafe and I say, "Hey, how's it going?" without even thinking about it. That's fluency. It's when English becomes part of your everyday life. Sometimes I meet new people and they tell me, "Wow, your English is really good." And I smile because they have no idea how many embarrassing moments are behind that compliment. How many times I confused beach with bitch. How many times I said I am boring instead of I am bored. How many times I mixed up sheet and, well, you know the other word. But that's what makes it beautiful. Every mistake is a story. Every laugh is progress. Every misunderstanding is a lesson. There was a day at work when my boss said, "You're killing it today." And for a second, I thought I was in trouble. I said, "I'm sorry, I didn't kill anything." He laughed so hard and explained what it meant. I felt silly, but I never forgot it again. Learning English in America changed not just my language, but my personality. I became more open, more curious, more confident. I started to understand not just the words, but the culture, the humor, the small things people say without even thinking. Like when someone says, "What's up?" and they don't really want to know what's up, they just mean hi. Now I look back and I realize how much I've grown. There were days when I wanted to give up, days when I felt stupid, days when I couldn't express myself. But every single one of those moments led me here, to this version of me, speaking freely, laughing at my old mistakes, and sharing this story with you. So if you're listening to me, I want you to remember this. Don't be afraid to sound funny. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Laugh at yourself, learn from every moment, and keep going. Because one day, without even realizing it, you'll start thinking in English. You'll tell a joke in English and make people laugh. You'll dream in English. And that's when you'll know that you've made it. Fluency isn't about having a perfect accent or knowing every word in the dictionary. It's about being brave enough to keep speaking, even when you're nervous. It's about connecting with people, telling your story, and living your life in another language. I used to think I needed to sound like a native speaker, but now I know that sounding like me is enough. My English has my rhythm, my personality, my history. It's not perfect, but it's real. And the truth is, English gave me more than words. It gave me confidence, friendships, opportunities, and a new version of myself. So keep going. Watch movies, talk to strangers, sing in English even if you sound terrible. Keep learning, keep laughing, and never stop trying. Because one day you'll look back and realize you're not just speaking English, you're living it.